In this world, there are two kinds of men: the strong men and the weak men, the proactive men and the reactive men, the men who take advantage and the men who are taken advantage of. Or, as we say in the animal kingdom, what we call the predator and the prey. Now, we don't like to think about this often as human beings, but the truth is, we too are members of the animal kingdom. And that's the reason why a lot of the rules that apply in the animal kingdom apply to us as well, whether we like it or not, right? It's a part of our reality. There's a hierarchy in the animal kingdom. That's why the food chain exists. That same hierarchy exists here in the human world with our civilization, which is exactly why we have these strong and weak men, or these predator and these prey, right? So, what we're going to be talking about in this video is a very simple thing. We're going to be understanding the difference between the predator and the prey, how they relate to each other, how exactly those parallels in the animal kingdom look in our world today, in terms of the two different kinds of men, that strong and weak man, the predator and the prey. And more importantly, we're going to be going through the most common signs of a prey. Prey and predator are different precisely because of the way they behave, act, and the way they make decisions, right? If you want to know the difference between the two, you're going to have to understand where they come from a point of intention. Because here's the thing: when I was coming up with the idea for this video, I honestly wanted it to be just a list of actions, right? Maybe a list of 10 to 20 actions that a prey is likely to take versus a predator. That was how the original format of this video was going to be. But then I realized if I did it that way, I'd be doing you a disservice, because I don't just want you to understand the actions themselves. I want you to understand the mindset and intentions that create those kind of actions. The actions are themselves a symptom of the emotions that create them and the thoughts that are driving those emotions to begin with. So if we understand the intentions, then we understand the actions, and then we understand the kind of animal we're dealing with, predator or prey. So we're going to be going through what I believe to be the most common by far kinds of mindset for a prey. And obviously, as we go, we'll be relating it to how the predator works, etc., etc. And by the end of this video, you should have an amazing understanding of not just where you stand, use this as a way to self reflect for your own actions and your own thinking, but also how to improve, how to switch sides if you need to. Okay? All right, let's get on with this. Perfect. Now, what, in my opinion, would be the most common, by far, most common trait of a prey, mindset of someone that thinks like a prey, is going to be this: control. Or more specifically, let me put it like this so it makes even more sense: a need for control. This is probably one of the biggest ones. Maybe not the biggest one in terms of impact and importance, but definitely one of the most common, easily identifiable signs. When someone is in their mindset a prey, they need control. And this is a very tricky one, because here's why. For every single person that gets into social dynamics and the game and pickup, this more than likely is the original reason we get into this game, right? That's the tricky part about this. We all start out wanting to learn more about girls and talking to girls and understanding the female nature precisely because we're trying to seek out a sense of power and control in an area of life where we believe we have no power. But here's the irony to it: the better you get with women, the better you understand how women work, the more you interact with women and see how that actually goes, the more you realize it's your need for control that is killing your game. What we call emotional attachment and neediness and creepiness. All those things emanate from this need for control. The more you require control, the more your game sucks. And this isn't just going into talking to a woman for the first time, it also goes into having a relationship. The boyfriends who are more likely to lose their girlfriend, the husbands who are more likely to lose their wife, are the men who are always looking to alleviate themselves of all anxiety that they feel inside and make themselves feel more secure in the relationship by having complete control and certainty. And that leads to weird behavior. That leads to, tracking her location, know where she is all the time. That leads to, weird behavior and make guarding behavior in front of her coworkers and her friends. That leads to really big errors in judgment when it comes to anything around or about her, right? This is where all that comes from. It's the need for control. So you have to understand, a prey will always think like this on a evolutionary level because that is the animal they are. A prey as an animal in the animal kingdom doesn't have a lot of control, which is why the prey is always seeking some kind of control or the other. This is why it's the most important thing to them. It's the thing that is front and center in their minds, gaining more control. But again, like I said before, the irony is you gain more control by relinquishing it, right? The better you get at game, the more you understand that the point of game isn't to help relieve you of anxiety by gaining more control and certainty. The point of game is to get more comfortable in the anxiety. That's where you actually gain real influence. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, the second sign or characteristic or mindset of prey would honestly be more connected to the first one a little bit, but it looks a little different. It looks like this. Don't know why I started with a straight line there, but we move. Seeking power outside of yourself. If there's one thing a prey minded person will do every single time, is they'll find ways to garner power that they believe they don't have, but from someone or something else. They'll attribute power to something else to help gain control within their own situation. Um, Here's something weird that happened to me when I was younger. Back in high school, there was this chick in my class that I did not like. Her name was Enyola. I grew up in Nigeria. So you'll hear some interesting names like that. Enyola is a Yoruba girl. But I didn't like Enyola. Enyola was a bitch and a cunt, and she was annoying. Today was no different this day. I had gotten the notes ahead of the rest of the class for a particular class, a teacher. I think it was my economics teacher. I was quite the teacher's pet with him. He liked me a lot because I did very well in this class. Economics was one of my stronger subjects. And I can't remember the exact politics around it, but Enyola needed my notes to complete hers. And the teacher had suggested to her to ask me for my notes to complete her notes before, the exams has started. I think they were around the corner like a week from then. So Enyola in front of the entire class, and by the way, this entire thing was happening in front of the whole class, this exchange. She comes over to my desk after just talking to my teacher, Mr. Chima, shout out to him, and she goes, I need your notes. Give me your notes. And me being the hard headed, stubborn guy I am, I was like, no, I don't even like you. Absolutely not. You're not getting my notes. So she hussies all the way back to the teacher and she points at me and she goes, he won't give me his notes. And the funniest thing happened. The teacher looks at her and goes, well, what do you want me to do about it? She had run over to him as some kind of authority figure, right? Like, okay, surely I can get him to do what I need him to do. But Clearly, that didn't work in that situation. What I want to point out is that mindset right there, the need to go and seek power that she thought she didn't have. Because here's the thing: if Anyola played her cards right, she could have gotten those notes out of me, man. She could have offered me lunch, two donuts and a sausage at the canteen would have hit the spot. I was a big back back then. I'm a big back even now. Don't be fooled by the six pack. I eat a lot. I love food. Um, she could have done a lot. There were so many options available to her to actually getting out of me what she wanted. But she had no skill. She had no discipline. She had no patience. So she went with what in her mind was a shortcut that only did nothing but take longer for her, right? Spoiler alert, she never got those notes out of me. She had to wait for someone else to borrow my notes, have them get done with it, and then she borrowed that person's notes. That's how that ended up happening. And obviously, she didn't do too well in that class that year. But you see this all the time with a lot of people that are always looking for something outside of themselves to lean on to make significant changes in their own lives and in their own relationships. I'm talking about the Christian men that use Jesus as their ultimate excuse. I'm talking about the Muslim guys who think Sharia law is the solution to everything. I'm talking about the passport bros who need to travel to a different country to get women to behave themselves in front of them. And it's like, why do you need the culture of another country to get a woman to behave? Why can't you be that culture? That's prey mentality. That is prey mentality. To need something outside of yourself, that is prey mentality. That is a perfect example of it. So right there, if you have that, if you're seeing that in your behavior and your decision making, you're seeking power outside of yourself, take notes of that. Like, be very careful, okay? Number three. Number three is going to be paranoia. Specifically, paranoia around, and I should probably write this entire thing down too. Paranoia around being, oh, I guess I probably don't have space, but paranoia around being taken advantage of. Let's go with that. Why not? Paranoia around being taken advantage of. This is a big one. It's not as common or obvious most of the time, but it's the subtle fear of every prey, every single time. The prey minded individual, the prey minded man, is always scared of the idea of being taken advantage of by women or other men. Let's go back to the animal kingdom. We're talking about animals before, right? In the animal kingdom, when prey exists in the wild, there's a reason, and this is a real fact, by the way, you can Google this. There's a reason most prey have their eyes on the side of their head, right? Most of the time on the side of their head. Predator always have it in front, right? Like at the front of their face. But most prey have to have that interesting, almost 360 perception, 360 vision. Why? It is indicative of how they've evolved over time to be able to look out for the presence of predator in their environment. Because you see, when you're a prey out in the wild, your biggest issue, your biggest problem, and the thing you are thinking about the most every single time is the fact that you might get got today. You might be taken advantage of today. Today might be the day the predator finally catches you. And so, as an animal, the prey is far more hyper vigilant than the predator. The predator only thinks about the prey when it's hungry, right? When it's time to eat, okay, let's go hunt something. Let's go find some prey to, nosh on. The prey, on the other hand, always has to have the predator on its mind front and center, and always has to be thinking of different ways to get away from the predator so that it doesn't get got. And so if you find yourself as a man being very concerned about not getting taken advantage of, and in fact, pay attention to this, looking out for information, especially here on the internet, that helps you to navigate the world in a way where you can't be taken advantage of, you know what kind of mindset you're operating under, right? I have this running joke, and this is no no beef with Rollo Tomasi. I love Rollo Tomasi. I like his work. Shout out to him. Shout out to his book series, The Rational Male, especially preventive medicine. That would be, I think, the biggest book in that entire series. Even though I personally think religion is the better piece of work. The reason The Rational Male Preventive Medicine is the biggest, most popular of all the books in his Rational Male series is precisely because of this same prey mindset. A lot of men are so concerned with not getting taken advantage of by Chad to the point where they religiously study the preventive medicine book, The Rational Male Preventive Medicine, because that book is essentially a guide for weak men on how to operate through the world as a weak man so that strong men don't take advantage of you. Let's be honest. My running joke for that book is that it really shouldn't be called The Rational Male Preventive Medicine. It should be called The Weak Male. The Weak Male, how to exist in a world as a weak man, right? How to exist as a weak man in a world that isn't conducive for weak men. That is what that book should be called. Honestly, I genuinely believe that. And that, again, no knock to the work. It's amazing work. If you haven't read that book yet, you're an idiot. Go read that book, please. Buy it, buy the hard copy, read it online. I think there's an audiobook version. Listen to it as many times as possible. It's an amazing book. But again, let's not lie about what that book is. The book itself is essentially like, if I put it in the African savannah terms, it's like if the antelopes got together and made a guide on how to escape the lion. That's what that book is, right? So if you find yourself seeking out that kind of information constantly, then you might be an antelope. You might be prey. You know, if you have two different YouTube videos, right? And one, the thumbnail and the title is something like, you know, how to make women feel safe or how to approach women or something like that. And the other one is look out for these signs, right? The title is like, she'll do these things before she cheats on you. And then the thumbnail is like, watch out for these signs. Which one are you more likely to click on? More than likely, it's this one over here. It's this one over here. The one that is like telling you, listen, watch out for these things. You might get got. If the you might get got message resonates with you, prey mindset. Sorry about that. I know this is one of those harsher videos. It hurts to hear all these things, but it needs to be said. It's very necessary so that you know where you stand and you know how you move on. All right. So paranoia, that's a big one. Prey are very paranoid creatures. Let's move on. Number 4. This one is again a more subtle one, but it's very, very important. And that is avoiding risk. You see, the ultimate weakness of the prey or prey minded individual is risk taking. Because to take a risk is to do everything that the prey doesn't believe in, namely, entering on purpose a state of uncertainty. The reason why a risk feels like a risk, the reason why a risk feels the way it does, is precisely because a risk comes with it no guarantee of a particular outcome. And that is everything that the prey minded individual is avoiding. They do not want to take risks. They do not want to do anything that takes them out of their comfort zone. They do not want to do anything that makes them feel an above average level of anxiety or shock or uncertainty. And this might, it looks differently depending on the person and their own preferred way of dismissing risk in general. Some of them are just going to use straight up dismissal. Dismissal, maybe in the form of standards. That's a big one. Oh, nah, I'm not scared of taking risk. I just have Standards. What are you doing approaching women? You approaching women? You approaching women? Exactly. They try to feign like they have standards. In reality, they're just scared. Um, what else? Ooh, overthinking. Overthinking. That's your analysis paralysis people. That's the people that are stuck overanalyzing and theorizing without actually taking action, right? That's a big one, overthinking. But in my opinion, the way avoiding risk actually looks like most of the time, and the most obvious way to know that someone is just scared of taking risks, is this one right here. Avoiding or speaking down on the need for competition. Whenever you hear any man, grown man, talk about competition of any kind, like it is not good or a bad thing or unnecessary, prey minded immediately. That person is weak as fuck. I was talking very recently on a live that I had on a different app about the current situation happening about Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy suggesting to the American public that America needs more foreign specialized workers in tech, especially. And there's a lot of Americans that are, up in arms about it, saying, no, America first. Americans need these tech jobs. They need to be prioritized in the tech marketplace, and they shouldn't be bringing in these H1B1 visa Indian dudes or Pakistani dudes or South Asian dudes in general, whatever, to come and take these jobs, right? Take these jobs. Oh my God. And I've said it in that live, and I think I said it in several lives, and I'm going to say here again. They sound like bitches to me. They sound like bitches to me. First of all, no one is guaranteed anything in this world. To act like any outcome is your birthright at all, even if you were told it is an incorrect way to move through life. The best way to show that you believe something is yours is the work you put in to get it, right? Second of all, it is a marketplace. Everyone is free to the best of their abilities to compete for the same outcome. You don't get to have a leg up because of whatever reason, especially not some dumb reason like you happen to be born in a particular country. Not to diss America. I love it here. It's awesome. It's great, right? But that doesn't mean anything. And if you think it means anything, it's not even because you think it means anything. It's because you're looking for a way to avoid competing. Compete or die, motherfucker. Compete or die. That is how this world works. That is how it works in the wild. That is how it should be in your mind. Compete or die. Any man that shies away from fair and honest competition, fuck fair and honest, any competition at all, even if you are starting out at a massive deficit, you're weak. That is prey minded, and you should definitely not remain in that place. You should definitely not allow yourself to keep thinking like that's the right way to go. Okay? The last one we're going to talk about, because I've run out of space. Number 5 is closely tied to the last one, which is avoiding risk, but this one is slightly different. And that is not taking responsibility. The truest mark of a strong individual is the ability to take complete personal responsibility. There is nothing that says, I am truly strong, I am truly strong minded, like the ability to just be like, you know what? It's all my fault. Good outcome, bad outcome, neutral outcome. It is all my fault. And weak minded, prey minded people are always in the habit of looking for different ways to blame something or someone outside of themselves. That is the most common, by far, method for knowing who actually is prey or predator whenever people are in a setting where they talk about things that they truly deeply believe in. You always want to look out for the people that are victims in how they think and talk. If they're always talking as if they are at the mercy of life and they're in complete reaction to life, and it's always someone else's fault, right? It's modern women, it's the dating apps, it's the white man, whatever excuse they can come up with. Whenever you hear people talk like that, that's how you know weak-minded. And if that is how you operate in this world today, I can tell you for a fact, whether you like to hear it or not, that you're not going to go far with that kind of mindset. No one that has ever achieved anything of real substance and value in this world has ever had that kind of weak, reactionary, prey mindset. You want to be a predator about these things. You want to be the kind of person that takes complete responsibility, whether things go well or things don't go as well. You want to be the kind of person that can always blame yourself for all the outcomes that happen to you, because it always starts with you. And whether you believe that you have 100% control or not, which, by the way, you don't, you should still behave as if you do. Even when things that are outside of your control, well outside of your control, happen to you, you should always take them as things that happen because of you. Find a way to blame yourself, my mentor would say. Find a way to blame yourself. It'll put the fire underneath your ass to find new ways to prepare for outcomes that are unforeseen but are now seen by you. And it'll give you the creativity and the resourcefulness to move forward with greater success going into the future. Now, I know a lot of what I talked about didn't necessarily sound like a dating advice, but that's because all this advice applies to more than just dating or dealing with women, right? When we're talking about stuff like not needing control or having a need for control, that affects your relationships with women. Because if you're always trying to seek certainty or control, that signals to her that you don't think that you're worthy of anything. She instantly knows that your self-concept is weak. Because if you had a good self-image, an amazing self-respect, you wouldn't have a need to be certain all the time. You would be okay with uncertainty. You'd be comfortable in it. Like I said, game is not for relieving yourself of anxiety. It's for getting comfortable in the anxiety, right? When we talk about seeking power outside of yourself, and I give all those examples of the Sharia law and using the Bible and the passport, bros, that also deals with your relationship with women too. A woman can always tell a man that isn't sure of himself. It's very obvious for them to find out. It's very obvious for them to know. They're very keen to looking out for signs like that. Like, okay, you can only have power when all these situations are set up like this. So a woman's job at that point becomes finding unique, creative ways to put you in a less than ideal situation. And you give them enough time, they'll pull it off, right? They're clever. Then you have the paranoia and always looking for opportunities to get taken advantage of. You know who always gets taken advantage of? The person who is paranoid around women. That is the mark. That is the person that women are always going to try. That is the person that always has gaping psychological holes that women can exploit. When we talk about avoiding risk taking, the most attractive trait to women is risk taking. So you can't even begin to become successful to any degree with women unless you're willing to take some massive risks without trying to tell yourself that you don't want her because your standards are too high, without trying to dismiss the need for interacting with women, without overthinking it and becoming a theory junkie and not practicing at all, and definitely without trying to place yourself as, you know, over the need for competition, because it's always competition. Every desirable woman you want, some other guys want her too. It's just inevitable. And then lastly, the inability to take complete responsibility, it just makes you so unattractive to women and illogical for them to go along with, for them to follow your leadership. Because if you're going to lead her, you're going to take responsibility. And if you can't do that, she can't feel safe with you, right? So all this advice applies to not just with women, it applies to life. Always remember that. Always be looking out for these things, these types of mindsets. And if the decisions you're making on a daily basis are reflective of any of these, it's very important. If you want to begin to make some massive progress in the way of actually dealing with all these things once and for all, right? Because you really can't just, not to digress too far, but you really can't just start doing the opposite and all of a sudden you're good, right? These aren't actions you take. These are decisions you make. This is your decision making. These are your intentions. The only way to change this is a deep rooted psychological change. And the best way I can help you with that is you have to join my private community. I have an entire private community. It's called the Supervillain Academy. And you can begin your own personal villain academia so that you can begin to change all these things about yourself, honestly, by just way of osmosis. I'm not even going to talk about the courses in there, the classes, the documents, PDFs, the calls that we're going to have bi-weekly. I'm not even going to talk about that. It's just the fact that being around that kind of information and all the other men in there that are just like you, making sure they're making all these massive adjustments in their life, you're going to change via osmosis. It just happens. It happens naturally, right? Like the whole saying says, if you have four smart friends, you're the fifth one, right? That's how it works. Join my private community, Supervillain Academy. You can get all those links in the description and the first comment, and I'll see you inside. For now, though, I want you to check these out again. I want you to go through this video again, really memorize all these things so that you can begin to use them in your daily life and really look out for them in yourself and other people. And while you're at it, go ahead and check out some more videos on this channel so that you can get even more information to help you get better in game, with women, and with life. It's been Jason, favorite scientist. Do with all this information what you must.